The story of Fiume starts with an Italian poet, playwright, author, journalist, and military officer during World War I, named Gabriele D'Annunzio. D'Annunzio was born in 1863 in Pescara, which lies in the modern-day Italian region of Abruzzo. At the age of 13, he was adopted by his aunt, Anna Lolli. D'Annunzio was deeply influenced by classical literature, Latin and Greek authors, which would later show up in his stylistic richness and mythological references. D'Annunzio was sent to school at the Liceo Ciccognini in Prato, Tuscany. Here, he published his first work of poems, named Primo Vere. In 1881, Gabriele enrolled in the University of Rome La Sapienza, where he became involved in many literary groups, including Cronaca Bizantina. D'Annunzio's poetry sits within the broader European movement of decadentism, alongside figures like Charles Baudelaire and Stéphane Mallarmé. He was also an ascetic, a believer that life itself should be lived like a work of art. For example, in his novel Il Piacere, the protagonist doesn't just appreciate beauty, rather, he performs it, turning daily life into theatre. This idea would especially show up in his later life. In works like Il Trionfo della Morte, influenced by Friedrich Nietzsche, D'Annunzio explores the idea of exceptional individuals who stand above ordinary morality. His characters are aristocrats, elitist, and convinced that they have a right to dominate not only physically, but spiritually. In 1897, D'Annunzio was elected to the Italian Parliament. He was initially aligned with the right faction, but he moved to other parties quite opportunistically. This can confuse some. However, you must understand that his ideology was but a limiting factor to him. His nationalism, charm, and personal influence were his true characteristics. Many view him as a political performer and a sensualist above all else. This, however, cannot be said for his supporting views on strong authoritarian, elitist leadership, which stayed consistent with him throughout his life. D'Annunzio was a big figure at the outbreak of World War I. He strongly supported interventionist action for Italy, delivering speeches across Rome and calling war a moral and aesthetic necessity. He argued that Italy should join the Triple Entente against Austro-Hungary. He framed war as moral and national rebirth, the revival of the Roman spirit, and purification of the Italian soul. Once Italy joined the war, Gabriele enlisted. He was in his 50s at the time, which was unusually old for combat. However, this didn't stop him in the slightest, as he went on to become an officer. It was in the war that he lost sight in his right eye for a short period of time. He later used the experience of healing this injury as a topic to write about. The war catalyzed Gabriele's nationalistic ideals. It also gave him insight into how to deliver public speeches, which would become a major tool for him later. After World War I, Italian nationalists felt hard done by during the peace conference. Believing that Italy hadn't gained the land that they were initially promised or presumed to receive, one of these places was Fiume. This led D'Annunzio and a group of 2,000 inspired nationalist soldiers to march into the city in September 1919. D'Annunzio did this without official support from the Italian government, but due to his being a war hero, they hesitated to stop him. Once in control, D'Annunzio illegally declared the Italian Regency of Cornaro. He, along with a syndicalist named Alceste de Ambris, wrote the constitution known as the Charter of Cornaro. The state was effectively a national syndicalist state, but it was largely theatrical and wasn't sustainable. In his newfound state, Gabriele delivered daily public speeches, accompanied by music, lavishly dressed women, and uniformed men. The politics of the state was very much aesthetic rather than practical. The city attracted many artists, philosophers, politicians, fascists, nationalists, and authors. This led to the city transforming into a hub of artistic expression and aesthetic governance. However, the state was gaining large attention worldwide, and the Italian government couldn't continue to ignore it. So in 1920, the Italian government signed the Treaty of Rapallo, making Fiume a free state, not a part of Italy. D'Annunzio outright rejected this treaty. On the 24th of December 1920, Italian forces began to move into position encircling Fiume. Naval vessels also arrived offshore. Italy then issued an ultimatum to D'Annunzio and his supporters: surrender the town peacefully, withdraw within hours, and avoid any military confrontation. D'Annunzio refuses. Later that night, the Italian Navy ships began to bombard Fiume. Italian artillery also targeted strategic positions held by D'Annunzio. This marked the start of the conflict. On Christmas Day, less than 24 hours after the bombardment began, defensive positions inside Fiume started to crumble, which led to a major morale drop amongst D'Annunzio's legionnaires. Many of them began to start discussing surrender locally. On the 26th of December, the Italian forces continued their pressure on the city, but largely avoided a total assault. The 27th of December marked the beginning of D'Annunzio's indirect talks with Italian commanders. The Italian infantry was ready to enter the city if necessary. However, this proved to be unnecessary, as D'Annunzio surrendered to the Italian government on the 28th of December, marking an end to not only the conflict, but also to the Italian regency of Carnaro. D'Annunzio later went on to withdraw from the city in early 1921, retreating back to private life at the estate, later known as Vittoriale degli Italiani.